I'm a very rational person. I'm kind of like not into all kind of woo-woo stuff. I wish I had done is wore like an aura ring or something like that to kind of like see what like brainwave state I was in.
I think pain is the most studied application for hypnosis with thousands of studies. I like to refer to hypnosis as precision plasticity.
Right.
Plasticity means like reorganization of the neural networks.
I do believe it's all self-healing. The mind and body are always communicating to one another, and that creates a whole set of neurochemical changes within the body.
I didn't expect the outcome to be what the outcome was. I only saw color. As I kind of like cleared that blue color out of that frame, I actually could feel something change like physically in my back.
Even if you don't get it, even if you don't fucking believe it, you can't deny it.
Welcome back to another edition of the Vitalium podcast. My name is John Chavez, the co-host, here with the one and only Albert Chen. Little jet lag, come from overseas. How's everything going, Albert?
I'm alive. Alive.
Beautiful. We have a very special guest today. Gila or Gila?
Gila.
Gila Zak, world-renowned hypnotist. Super excited to talk to her. I've been fascinated by the field of hypnosis for many years. She's one of the most well-versed people out there. I met her at HypnoThoughts last year, and ever since then, we've been in contact and been looking forward to speaking with her on the podcast. So welcome, Gila.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming through and
Thanks for
excited
having
to
me.
chat with you.
Yeah, I feel honored. Thanks.
So tell us a little bit about your story, like your origin story. We always get into like how people came about, you know, where you originated from, where you grew up, and then how'd you get into hypnosis?
So origin story. Well, let's see. I was born mixed race in rural East Texas in the summer of love, 1967. And so that was an interesting place to grow up, being half Mexican, half white. And so, yeah, it was interesting. I think I've been an observer of human behavior for as far as I can remember, just because experiencing some racism and things, you just kind of wonder, like, why? Like, why is this even a thing? And you add to that the fact that my biological father was pretty eclectic and strange and hippy dippy, and my mom was pretty hippy dippy. So you try to mesh that in with a very conservative culture, very Christian Bible Belt, and it just, it lent itself to some interesting experiences. And then aside from that, being all hippy dippy, you could only have honey and no white sugar, and you could only have whole grain multi-seed bread and not Wonder Bread. And I wanted like a freaking chocolate bar, but no, you have to have these Tiger Milk bars and carob. And I was just like, okay. Because I just remember thinking, why do people do what they do? And then there was a lot of dysfunction in the family. So as I got older, I just wanted to understand why people behave and do what they do. And so I really feel like I've been an unconscious behaviorist most of my life. And then I moved to California when I was about 9. My mom went through 2 marriages. We came to California when I was 9. And that's really when I experienced the most stability I ever had. And my stepdad, which I now call my dad, because he's the one who's been there. But yeah, so that's, where I think it started for me as a human, gaining a lot of empathy by experiencing firsthand what it's like to be in a position where people are being unkind and all of that. And then fast forward to hypnosis. We always knew about hypnosis and altered states of consciousness. My grandmother on my dad's side, she was very eclectic. She worked in movies and television in New York City through the 50s and 60s. And so she got exposed to all kinds of cool stuff. So there were books in the house on Edgar Cayce and Jose Silva and all these ways that we could play with consciousness. So we were taught very early that you can create your reality through what you think and what you experience. And so I knew all about hypnosis in general, but I really thought it was more for like weight loss or smoking cessation or past life regression. And then when my daughter got diagnosed with Lyme disease, she was about 10 years old, I want to say, I thought, okay, there's more to health and wellness. I need to go back to my hippie roots a little bit. Let's cover this from every angle: medical, emotional, and spiritual. And then around that same time, she developed a fear of vomiting, what we call emetophobia. She had a real life experience where she got stomach flu, and she had a real life experience where she got stomach flu. And then from there on, she developed this fear that progressed into a phobia where she didn't want to eat in restaurants She was afraid she was going to get food poisoning. She kept checking all the labels and the dates on things, afraid that they were going to be expired. She didn't want to go to sleepovers with her friends because she's like, what if their kitchen isn't clean? And I'm like, we cannot live like this, because it was about a year and a half of that. And so on advice, I took her to a hypnotist. And for her, when the hypnotist said, take me to the time and place where your fear of barfing began, she popped into a past life simultaneously and saw herself as a little boy with chocolate brown skin. And my hair is cut really close to my head, and my clothes are tattered, and I don't have shoes. And she worked this whole scene, and you could see her body change, and even the tone and the way that she spoke changed. And she went through this whole experience where she got hit by a truck riding a bicycle. And as the little boy lay dying, all the fluids backed up into the throat, and that was the moment of death. So for her, in this life, being the same age as a little boy, having a similar experience, and she had woken up in the middle of the night, which we now know is a very hypersuggestible state, that kind of was the impetus for that particular experience happening for her. But that's not to say that it's always a past life experience. It just had to be for her in this case. So when I took her to the hypnotist, I'm like, that's fucking cool. Like, that's way more fun than being a high level contract bookkeeper. So I'm going to learn that. But at the time, I was transitioning into being a biofeedback specialist. So brainwave entrainment, muscle reeducation, and all that. And so I kind of got distracted with hypnosis for a while, kind of didn't do it. And then about 5 years into my biofeedback practice, the tap just turned off. It's like no matter what I could do, and I'm a networking boss, and I could not get new clients. It was like, what is happening here? So I just kept saying, okay, what am I supposed to do? And so I got out an Oracle deck. And I used to think Oracle decks were bullshit. I'm like, angels, schmangels, The only way to rebel from my hippie parents was to go like so clinical and so skeptical and so mainstream. But anyway, I had softened at this point, and I got out an Oracle deck and I drew a card, and it said, you are a healer. I'm like, well, if I'm a healer, where are my clients? And so I got another deck. I'm like, let's try this deck. I draw another deck. I got the healer card. I'm like, whatever. I'm going to get the animal deck because there's not a healer card in the animal deck. So I get the animal deck, I pull it out, and I pull the snake. And snake is all about transformation and shedding of the old and coming into the new. And then at the bottom, in a little asterisk, it said, additional meaning, you are a healer. So I'm like, okay, I have these 3 cards in front of me. If I'm a healer, you better show me how I'm supposed to do this, because I have no freaking clue. And then it was right after that I picked up a magazine, and it said hypnosis. I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to learn that. Time went by. I saw it another place. By the time I saw the 3rd one, I was aware enough to go, okay, this is it. And so I went and sought out a very credible training program that I knew. I compared it to a lot of others. And 13 years later, here I am with you.
That's
talking
awesome.
about hypnosis.
Yeah. So if you don't mind me asking, what was the outcome of your daughter working with the hypnotist?
For her, she was about 90% done after that first session. As a matter of fact, when we left, she opened her eyes and she's like, Mama, that was so cool. It was like a movie. I was in the movie. And she was crying, and I'm sitting in the back crying. But she said, what was most impactful to me is when we got in the car, she says, I'm hungry. Can we go get some food? And she would have not wanted to eat and then get into the car because she was afraid she'd get car sick, which she had never gotten car sick before. But that's how the mind can map across through phobias. So yeah, and then it took a little bit of time to unwind it, just for the neurotransmitter. No, it took a little bit of time to unwind it till where just the neural pathways stop expecting the fear. And then once that happened, she was pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Albert's a Qigong healer, and I think before this podcast, you guys engaged in a session. You want to talk a little bit about how your hypnosis session went with Gila?
Yeah, it was crazy, actually. Very unexpected. So generally, I'm a very big skeptic about all this stuff. Although I'm a big healer too at the same time. I guess over the last 25 years, I've tried a lot of different things, and mostly kind of like in the Qigong world, right? When people kind of like say there's all these people that are Qigong masters, and I've met with hundreds of them. And if I had not met like the first one I had met that kind of healed my back when I had my back injury, I would not believe in this at all, because almost everyone I've met since then has been kind of like not incredible. We're not the same kind of transformative experience I had in the first one. But I think like in the last like maybe year or so, I've been exposed to like a number of different things that have kind of like begin to shift my mind about things that I didn't believe before that seem to work way better than I thought they would work. And so a lot of this has been guided through John. And so like John's been kind of opening a lot of uh a lot of kind of like my thought processes of like what I kind of like believe in or I don't believe in. So and in general I'm a very rational person. I'm kind of like not into all kind of woo woo stuff. Like even some of the stuff that you were talking about before, I'm not really sure. Kind of like past life kind of stuff. Like, but I'm being exposed to it like more and more, and I'm beginning to tie together a lot of things that I had not really understood, like between kind of like the Eastern culture and the Western culture. So that's been really, really interesting. I have like lots of different perspectives on like what, um, like the those kinds of things like are in the Eastern kind of like world, which is like very spiritual, and then the Western world is kind of like explained differently. But there's lots of like kind of like correlations between all
Mhm.
this stuff. So I'm definitely opening up more into like things that I or at least willing to explore things that I had not been willing to explore before because I kind of like been very dismissive on all this stuff. And so the experience I had with you, so I've done 3 experiences with her, actually. I've, had 2 on Zoom and, 1 in person today. And so I would say, the 3 areas that we've been exploring have been sleep, mental blocks, and pain. And, the ability for hypnosis to be able to kind of affect, like, those conditions. And, um, I think they've all kind of like well, the first 2 were on Zoom, and they've worked in a way where I kind of feel that there is definitely like some impact, but I can definitely see that you need to maybe do a number of sessions to kind of like really get deeper into it. But the one today was transformative. So the one today actually was like really, really, really different. I have a very, very different perspective on the power of hypnosis after today. And
What'd you do to him?
yeah, I think like
Shh, don't
yeah,
tell.
it was really interesting. It I actually think that the so what she did with me, she put me into maybe I'll let her explain kind of what she did to me. So yeah.
Well, first I want to address your comment that yes, generally we need more than one session to resolve something. I like to say if there was one therapy that worked 100% of the time for 100% of the people, that would be the only therapy there is. And with hypnosis, I've experienced clients that have had one and dones, but those are the exception to the rule, and it's issue dependent, person dependent, context dependent. There's so much that goes into it. But that being said, the average person, 3 to 6 sessions, you're going to resolve what the issue is. Some people need a little fewer, some people need a little bit more. As far as what we did with you today, when you and I met and we decided to do this little project, you had multiple areas that you wanted to work on. And so, in having the Zoom experience versus the in person, again, those sessions are all going to look different depending upon issue or context. What I wanted to give you today, because we were in person and you gave me permission to touch your body, your hand and wherever I need to touch your shoulder, whatever, um, that can lend itself to a completely different type of experience. So if I'm teaching somebody, sleep issues, I don't necessarily need to anchor the way that we anchored today through physical touch. But because we were doing this and I wanted you to have an experience, and that's the thing, as hypnotists, we want people to have an experience that's undeniable. Because when something's undeniable, even if you don't get it, even if you don't fucking believe it, you can't deny it. And so I wanted to create an experience for you today where I wanted to help prove to yourself that number one, you could be hypnotized to the depth that you didn't think you could be hypnotized before. And then we did the proofs. We did the catalepsy. We did, all the different things that we did. But the purpose for that, and I think that, we could play with hypnosis all day and make it fun and novel, but, and that's, there's value in that too. But today, what I really wanted to do was prove to you how powerful your unconscious mind and your body can work together to accomplish something. And then now that you have this tool, this cue, this anchor I gave you, you can use that for anything. So essentially, that's what we did.
Yeah. So I think the experience today is really interesting. So what happened with she I think I went deeper today than I've ever gone in hypnosis. That's the first thing. I've had maybe a couple experiences with other hypnotists that have been good, but not nearly as deep as today.
Like trance, usually.
Like trance. But I think also like before they're just kind of demos. You know, they're not like they weren't as focused on me. One was a group session. One was like, you know, at a restaurant, just like, you know, testing it out. Um, all been actually really good. But I think like today, I think the depth was really different. The depth was different, and then the application that we kind of went into, um, the application that we went into today was actually really different too, with kind of like almost a self healing pain. I think we went into it just kind of like, okay, hypnosis for pain. What can we do, right? And I didn't expect the outcome to be what the outcome was. I actually didn't expect it to physiological change my body, where I thought it was just kind of like, I'm just gonna like try to shut my brain from like thinking about this, right? Which is what I thought hypnosis was gonna do. But actually, what I felt it really did was I actually feel like it was a little bit more akin to like how my energy healing works. Um, so in that state, so let me back up one step. Um, the energy healing thing I do that's like the most effective is when I project my energy into someone else's body, and I'm able to actually heal them of pain. Um, and people always ask, can you do it to yourself, right? You kind of can. It doesn't work as well, not nearly as well. Like it's kind of like a fraction. When I say a fraction, like 10% of like how well it works when you do it to someone else versus kind of internally doing it to yourself. It takes a lot of time and kind of like, you know, training and pressure to kind of like heal yourself. And I think the dynamics of that are there's the dynamic of like how much power you can put into that area, and then the other dynamic is actually how relaxed you can get that area to be. And so when you're kind of like straining your body to kind of like create the pressure of the energy, it's hard to also relax at the same time. And so therefore this like circular kind of like problem of like trying to like heal yourself like doesn't really work because you're like tensing something and then you're trying to relax it to kind of like heal, and it doesn't really work. So I think in the process today, which I found fascinating was that I was able to I think like I actually think it's a form of energy healing, like in a weird way. Like I know it, you know, it's kind of like the way you explain it is like is different. The way that I experience it is really similar to like energy healing. So I'm able. So what you were able to do is put me into kind of a deeper state, and in that deep state, I could I could create kind of attention to a certain area of my body. It's not just the attention. It's actually it's the deep state, the attention, and then there was this visualization in a way. I'm not sure if that's what you intended for me to do, but you asked me about the colors and
Mhm.
any emotion or how any feeling in a certain area, and I only saw color, which was actually weird because I never thought I would see color to kind of represent something in my body. So that was unique, and I've never experienced that before either. And then the color was different in each part of my body. So when you actually ask, because I had maybe a couple different areas of my body, I have a lot of different pains in my body, mostly because I heal other people and I take on pain from healing them. It's like this weird thing where like it's not kind of like necessarily like my original pain. I'm also more susceptible to kind of like getting that pain in areas where I've had previous injuries. So I've had like this ankle injury before. I've had kind of like a back injury. I've had a neck injury, and so those areas kind of like are more pronounced. When I heal someone else, I get very easily kind of a signal in those areas back in my body. And so normally my process is I'll have one of my other healers heal me, but but to have a way for me to do it myself was kind of like really, really interesting. So I think what the visualization of like seeing kind of like that area and kind of like almost like moving it away is very similar to how my energy healing works. So when I heal someone, I will project energy into their body. And what I'll do is I'll get a signal back in my body in the same area in my body. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to clear that signal in my body. I'm actually not trying to work on your body at all when I'm actually healing you. And when I'm trying to heal, clear that signal in my body in that area, when I know that when I can shift kind of like that feeling in my body in that one area to go from to me it's a when I do that my modality it's like an intensity of signal. And so when I reduce the intensity of signal, I know I've actually kind of removed like the pain in that other person's body. That's my kind of like feedback loop. This process with hypnosis, the feedback loop is really different. So I actually could see and visualize like a color, like in a certain proportion of like a window. So like my basically basically when you asked me like is there any color or is there any like emotion or feeling, I was kind of like I don't really feel any emotion or feeling, but I kind of like really see this like in this frame here, like I see like an area where there's like some color and it's kind of odd to me. I never experienced that before.
Hypnosis
Um
is odd.
yeah, it was definitely odd. And so when the first part that we worked on was my lower back, I was like, "Oh, I see kind of like, it's weird. I see kind of like this like bluish kind of like, little color in this frame." And so as I kind of like cleared that blue color out of that frame, my back like physiologically changed. Like I actually could feel something change like physically in my back. And I was like, "Oh, that's kind of like really strange, right?" And then when you asked me to do my neck, like it was a different color. It was red in a different area. And so I'm not sure like how that kind of like maps back to kind of like the pain. Maybe I'm kind of like maybe visualizing kind of like my like some kind of like nerve map or something like that, right? And as I cleared that, I'm like, oh, I actually feel also a change here too. And then I think when you asked me to do my ankles or my feet, it was yellow. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, it was like another different color. And it was like also a little bit different. And so it was just like each area of my body, I had a different color, which was really interesting because I'd not experienced that before. And then the when you asked me kind of like to move it around, I was able to kind of like move it around partially, I guess through intention. But what I felt in my body was actually very similar to when someone heals me, like from the
Mm.
outside. That's what I felt, right? So it felt like I was getting an energy healing from somebody else, but I was doing it internally to myself. Um, I would say the power level, when we heal someone else, like we can get like a power level, like if I rate it from like a 1 to a 10, like typically it's like a 6. Um, I felt like internally I could generate like a power level like through that method of like a 2. But it's not often about power, it's about accuracy,
Mhm.
right? And so like because I was so relaxed through kind of like that trance state, the accuracy, sometimes like a person with low power can actually be a very effective healer. But that accuracy of actually being able to get into that area like really clearly and kind of like that pathway was super clear. And so and I could actually my feedback loop in this method was actually I could move the energy down to that area of my body, and I could see the feedback kind of like coming from this visualization and the color change. Where like it's not the color change. It was actually all black except for the one. It wasn't like a super clear color, and maybe it's because um, John has been kind of working on me with like this mindsight thing. So I kind of now like have this like visualization of color in my head,
Mhm.
and so like it was a little bit like kind of like that thing plus like this together and my energy healing and that color thing just kind of like moved out. And as I can kind of like move that color thing out or affect my, it was like this connected thing where like the color and the part of my body were kind of connected. And when I shifted the color or shifted kind of like my, I'm not even sure which one I was shifting. I don't know if I was shifting my body or shifting the color and what was the reaction, but basically there's a correlation between the two.
Yeah.
And so when that was like out of frame, like and then it was all black again, I could feel that I no longer had that pain in my body in that area again. That was fascinating. That was really, really fascinating to me because I had not experienced anything like that before. It's a little bit kind of akin to like when your sister did kind of like the remote kind of healing on me and I was in hypnosis. Like um I could feel kind of like the waves like in the same way. I didn't see color. They're all kind of like a little bit different. I think like all these things are connected like in a different way, and you just need to kind of like piece them together. Like and
That's to give you
so
a prompt.
yeah,
I
and
give you a
so
prompt. Does it notice if it has a color, quality, texture, or feeling? Is
right.
it possible that there's an emotion or a cope? Because we don't know. We can't, as the hypnotist, at least I don't, assume that it's going to be a certain way for someone. But if I give you a way to play with the imagination, if it were a color, oh, it would be this. And knowing that you do what you do, I did give you the suggestion at one point. I was like, I know that you know how chi moves through the body. I know that you know how to access that chi and how to direct it and use it. So let your imagination play. So it became, this is what you did. I just created the frame for it. You filled in the picture and made the process happen.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. It was like really incredible, and I feel like the ability to kind of like the other things that are really interesting was that you the finger thing. Um, like I'm afraid to do it even right now. Like
Well, remember, don't be afraid
yeah,
because it's all about intention. So what I did for Albert is I installed a cue, a trigger, an anchor. It just depends on what language you want to use. And the common one is just to touch the thumb and the pointer finger together. It's about as old as hypnosis, like, it's just like do this thing. So I wanted to teach him self hypnosis because it's one thing to have someone hypnotize you, but all hypnosis is self hypnosis. We're hypnotizing ourselves all day long in and out of different states. And so I thought, let's teach you how to enter the state on your own. And through practice and repetition, you can go deeper each time just because it's becoming more familiar to you. And so I wanted to install for him a cue so that when he wants to go into hypnosis, that's the on. We're going to turn the trance state on. And so did that very beautifully. And then the moment I said the opposite is going to be just going to turn it off to touch his opposite thumb and finger together. And so essentially what he was able to do is to turn it off and on quite well, quite beautifully. But you had a physiological sensation when you turned it on.
Yeah, it was so interesting. So like when I turned it on, like I could feel like a twitch, like in a muscle, kind of like over here. And then over time, she asked me to kind of like press harder. When I pressed harder, I actually felt like it expanded into my stomach, my core area here. So I actually felt like, I don't know if the nerves connect kind of like, into the body here,
Mhm.
but I actually felt like, when I did this, like I was like, oh God, like it was like this, and like it was almost like I had a cramp, like a little bit of a cramp, kind of like a mini cramp.
Mhm.
But the physiological change that really happened, that was really fascinating, was that when I turned it on, and I was kind of like in state, this like wave, like almost of like energy or a weight would kind of like grow like on this side of the body. So when I first did it, I was like, oh, it's on this half of my body, right? Like and as I held it longer and longer, it would keep shifting. It would actually go further and further to like this side of my body until it would almost. I don't know if I ever felt it like on this arm, but like I felt it throughout my entire torso, like moving across my body. Really, really interesting. So I actually felt like it was like almost like the trance state was actually kind of like putting me deeper, like physically, like
Mm.
physiologically deeper, like through my body, through kind of like this like action. So I thought, the trance state would come from my head, kind of like down. But I felt like, in this exercise, when I would do this, it was kind of like I would get a cramp, and then I would like feel this weight, and then something physiological would just change, where like almost like, I don't know. I want to say it started kind of like this like a wave. It's like it's a weird feeling. It's kind of like heavy, but it's kind of like deepening, maybe. Like it's like a heavy deepening feeling that kind of like is going across like my body in this direction. Um and it was like I was going like it's at like 30%, 50%, 70%, like 90%. I don't think it actually ever got to this arm. But
I want to clarify too. So if people are interested in watching that demonstration, if you have it somewhere,
yeah.
then they can see the full context. But to put you into the hypnosis state as part of the deepeners, I would use the word deeper, deeper, heavier and heavier. I happen to know that you respond well to kinesthetic suggestion, to direct suggestion, and also inferred that influence the way you feel physically in your body.
Yeah.
Not everyone does that. Some people have a disconnect between what they think and what they feel in their body. So, but you have a great connection. So, in part of the process of hypnotizing you, we had one arm get very, very heavy, your right arm. I gave you the suggestion that right arm is going to get very heavy as it gets heavier. And then we had a string, tied, a suggested string to his higher self consciousness that was really safe, and it was going to slowly pull his non-dominant hand up, which happened to be the left one. So the idea was that we were doing heavy and light, and it's a confusion thing. What do I pay attention to, the heavy or the light? And I'm looking to see which one you respond to the most, and you responded most to the heavy.
Hmm.
So once we did that and we got you into the deep trance, into that more Edsdale state, then it was like, okay, I wanted to prove to you just how much you were in hypnosis, because that proof, knowing you as the skeptic, is the leverage you were going to need to be able to do whatever else we were going to do after that. And so this is when I said that right arm is going to get so heavy. It's going to first, each finger weighs 5 pounds, then the arm weighs 50. And very soon you're going to imagine, sense, feel as if that right arm is as heavy as your entire weight of your body. And it's going to be impossible to lift. This is called a challenge, right? And so it works off the law of reverse action. The more you try, the harder it is. And so I said, come on, really try. You can try. And you couldn't, I saw you like twitch the hand, but you're like, you couldn't lift it.
You're locked in.
It was locked in. And so, and then meanwhile, and as that happens, as that gets heavier, the other one gets lighter, 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 lifts and floats. And we had him doing this other thing, going to his hand, to his head and all that. But, so that was the primer for you. This is very likely I can't say for certain, but very likely why, when you started doing your own work with this, you were already primed to have a suggestion that touching these fingers together was going to bring a heavy state
Mm,
of relaxation.
got it. Okay.
Okay.
That
And then when at the second, then after we had him make his arm so heavy he couldn't lift it, I said, in a moment, I'm going to lift your arm and I'm going to straighten it up. And even though it weighs as much as your entire body, in your mind, it's going to stay there. You're going to hold it there. You won't be able to drop it. And then that's when, so he had these two opposite things going, and it's challenging the mind. What do I focus to? That is when the person surrenders and they lock and they go deeper into hypnosis, because hypnosis is an escape. People think that to be in a trance state, it can either be really focused awareness or it can be an escape. Oh my God, she's talking so much. She's talking so much. What, she's having me do this. I'm just going to, and then you go into it and then you follow. But I think the key for you and what the way, to know your subject, or your hypnotee, as we call them now, is really essential, because I know you are such an analytical person. So, and there tends to be a measure of control. Nobody likes to lose control. We all want to be in control. The irony is we've given away our control to that memory, that thing, that worrisome whatever. So what I really wanted to create for you today was the notion that surrender is control. That the more you allowed yourself to surrender into the experience, that is reclaiming your sovereign energy and space to do what you want to do. I'm not trying to control you. I'm creating a space where you can surrender into the experience for the purpose of then controlling how you want to use your own energy inside of you. So that's what we were doing. And that's probably why, I can't say for certain, but probably why you were never able to feel the heaviness in that left arm, because that
mm,
was the light one.
got it. Okay.
Okay. So
Yeah.
just some context on.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about hypnosis is that I think pain is the most studied application for hypnosis, with thousands of studies, and a lot of people don't even know they exist.
Yeah.
And it's very effective in like various types of pain, whether it be hypnoanalgesia, utilizing hypnosis for surgeries and things like that, or chronic pain. How long have you been working specifically in the field of pain with hypnosis?
As long as I've been in practice, so going on 13 years. I
Okay.
mean, when I did my training, they covered all the different ways that you could apply hypnosis for the most part. Generally speaking, then from there, there's subcategories. But to be honest, pain is not one of my really big specialties. I take people as they come in. I don't niche. So if somebody comes in with pain, then I know how to work with it. But I also mix it up. I'm not going to do the same process with everybody, because everybody has a different background, different hobbies, different relational experiences. And so if we take the time to learn the background of the person, that's going to help us to create a protocol. There are specific pain management or hypnoanalgesia protocols that you can use, and those are kind of like a template and a framework. But I work with it as often as it shows up. And as I was telling Albert, it's pain management. And we have to be really clear about that, because some pain is never going to go away. If someone has a compression in their spine and they've got bone on bone, there is a physiological reason that that person is likely to experience pain. Now, can we manage that? Can we make it so boring that the conscious mind doesn't need to give it attention? And so that's where we can work with things like that. I have seen people come into me I have a woman recently in her 80s who's been experiencing stomach pain for decades. And they told her she had this and that, and she had those symptoms of that. And I think for her, it was maybe one, if not two sessions, and it was gone. There was so much emotion and so much trauma tied up, and so much identity tied up literally in knots in her stomach, that when she untied it and untangled it, through metaphor and through imagination, she came in and she goes, yeah, it's crazy. I went home and I just sat on the toilet and I just shit for like 3 hours. And she said, and I have no stomach pain anymore. And I said, well, is that unusual for you to sit on the pot like that? She goes, yeah, I've never had that happen. So, I mean, when we think of the capacity for hypnosis to work with pain management, we know that in situations that are really high stakes, where there's a lot of adrenaline, you've heard of people who didn't even know that they had a laceration until after the emergency or the first response action was remediated. Then like, oh my God, yeah, wow, I have this crazy thing that hurts. So this, I think, is how hypnoanalgesia and hypnotic pain management works. We can distract away from it, or we can solve it and mitigate it to where it's not an issue anymore. But I think it would be unethical to tell somebody, I can take your pain away forever. Because number one, that might not be true. And we can see, I see this a lot at the conferences when people have pain and someone does a demo and they walk away pain free. Well, I would be following up with that person a week later. How you doing? If they say, yeah, pain's gone, I'm like, fucking brilliant, man. That's fantastic. Well, it came back about, another 20, 30%. All right, cool. So you know that hypnosis can work for you. So let's explore that. And that's where multiple sessions might come into play.
I actually think I have a different perspective on that. And the thing I have a hard time differentiating right now is because I'm an energy healer, I I understand how that works like really, really well. I actually think, at least in my case, what I went through today was that uh it was so I agree with you that like if so I can heal someone and let's say you have like a herniated disc and you have sciatica. And so I can kind of like heal you. Your sciatica will kind of like go away. It'll feel like good. But if you go running again, it'll come back. The disc, I don't think I can heal the disc. So I got an MRI kind of recently, and I've had two injuries, both of which were kind of back related. And in my MRI, it still shows that I have like weakness in my disc here and my disc in my lower back. And so that has not changed with all the training I've done and all the healing I've gotten and everything. My pain is kind of intermittent. Most of it is kind of like gone.
The pain.
The pain, sorry, the pain. Sorry. The pain is kind so the pain is she is trying to make me disassociate kind of like the pain
My
from
pain,
from
the
me. So so the pain is actually like for the most part gone until I kind of like re-injured again. And then I'll need a healing again in order to kind of like to remove the pain. And then just a matter of time until I'll re-injure it again, or I put too much pressure on my back, or my kid is kind of like, whipping me around or something like that. But I feel actually what's going on is that there is like something physiologically happening in like the nerve to kind of actually do a healing where I actually don't have the pain. I actually don't think it's kind of like my mind just like blocking a signal from like feeling the pain. I actually feel like actually there's like actual healing that's kind of going on when we do our healing process, right? And I actually think that in this experience, what I had today, I actually feel that there's a light version of kind of like that healing process that's physiologically kind of like healing kind of like the maybe the nerve pathway that's kind of like going down there.
Mhm.
And so I can see why it's like not like permanent, right? One, because like the amount of energy is still kind of like not intense enough to kind of like really do the full healing. But I actually think that there's actually real healing that's kind of like really going on there. And I can see where there's some cases where like you will get like maybe a full healing from something that's even a light, because there's definitely some healings that we've done don't need a lot of energy that we can actually do it. Like I can like sometimes like someone's got like pain here, I can like literally just do this and I can actually make it kind of like go away like almost quasi permanently, right? Um Sometimes it needs a lot because there's something kind of like physically blocking it. So it's like this range of like,
Exactly.
so I actually think that like uh what you're doing is actually really healing kind of like that pathway, but just not enough kind of like power, kind of like to fully heal it. And it's more than just kind of like uh diverting kind of your attention away from like that. I actually think that there's actually something physically actually being healed when we're doing that
It
process.
does happen. It's both.
Yeah.
It's not all or one.
Right.
Or
I agree.
not
It's
all or-
both.
It's
Totally.
both.
Hmm.
Because there are people who with hypnosis they can that pain, like my client. It's been months now,
Right.
and she has not had the pain. So it can heal, but I do believe it's all self-healing, and the mind and body are always communicating to one another and responding, and that creates a whole set of neurochemical changes within the body. And if we think of, taking an aspirin for a headache is self-healing, putting Neosporin on a scratch or, it's all self-healing. And when people come to you and they are agreeing to allow themselves to be healed because, through the covenant of, I'm going to allow you to do this, that brings up the whole concept of, resistant benefit or secondary gain, as some people call it, or what's the positive intention of this pain? So an example of this would be a client I had once who, I have to be careful because I live in a really small town, but they were presenting with an issue where they had pain in their abdomen that was muscular, and they just wouldn't go away, and it would cause their whole back to lock up.
Yeah.
And so they had all the tests done, and the doctor's like, look, there's really nothing that we can see that's going on here. So they figured, what do I have to lose? I'll try hypnosis. By the way, we're usually the last stop. I mean, hopefully more and more we would get to be the first stop, but usually it's like, I've tried everything. I'm going to go see that hypnotist down in Baywood. So when they came to me and saw me, we did a completely different process for their pain. And what it turned out was, and sometimes you get an intuitive feeling. I'm like, I feel like, based on the story she's told me, the intake process, that there's a positive intention here, because the subconscious mind doesn't do anything without a positive intention. It's trying to protect us, in some way from something. And so it turns out that for her to have this experience was the only way that she could get a moment for herself, rest, and that she could get help from her partner. So it was like, then, she started laughing. She's like, oh my God, I see what I'm doing now. And I'm like, well, how about we use the hypnosis to help define your voice, to speak up in this relationship, to say, hey, we need some balance here.
Yeah.
So the pain went away. And the next session was about learning how to find her confidence in her voice and speaking up. So yes, I do believe that you can, for lack of a better word, heal pain with hypnosis. And we know that when there's a hypnosis for emergency, when people, a woman I know up here in the Bay Area, she's incredibly good at this, where if she works in the hospital settings, so you can suggest to the subconscious mind to pull blood away from an extremity that's experienced a wound of some kind. Bring all that blood out of the arm and let's pull it. Let's let it run through the vital organs. Let's let it run to other parts of the body, and blood flow will slow. So we do know that the mind and body are always communicating, responding, and hypnosis is a powerful tool to do that.
For sure. Yeah, one of my friends down at UC San Diego, well, a couple of my friends, Fadil Zaidan and John Dean, they did a study regarding the use of psilocybin for phantom limb pain.
Mm-hmm.
So it's for, I think, veterans that didn't even have a limb, but they were experiencing chronic pain. And they saw like significant pain relief just from the psychedelic administration. And I happen to think that there's some sort of overlap with hypnosis and psychedelics, that hypnosis might potentially be upregulating the endogenous psychedelic system, which allows for increased plasticity. Right. Plasticity means like reorganization of the neural networks and how it communicates, not just in the brain, but probably throughout the body as well, maybe even the gut brain. And I just find it fascinating. I think that there's a lot of research that needs to be done, going forward to quantify that. That's something that I'm really interested in. One of the things I wanted to talk, that we were talking about a little bit before the show, was the stigma of hypnosis, that it has a stigma based on maybe stage hypnosis, or people think that it's not real. Like, what was your perspective of hypnosis before you've ever been hypnotized?
It was definitely, I did not believe in hypnosis. I mean,
what was your perspective of it?
It was, I think stage hypnosis actually definitely gives it kind of like a bad name, like in a way, because like people think it's like kind of like not real. And even, I posted some videos of me being hypnotized by Albert Nuremberg, right? And my general community is people that are not very woo-woo. They're kind of like people in tech and stuff like that. And they're like, holy shit, was that real? Like, did it work, right? Like, I'm like, yeah, like, like I definitely kind of like, I wasn't like knocked out. Like I was very aware of like what was going on. But I was definitely in a different state. I think actually that is probably the thing that people don't really understand about hypnosis, which I think maybe we can talk about that a little bit today, right? Because I feel like meditation now is like more like widely kind of like generally kind of like understood and kind of like adopted. I mean, when I got into my energy healing qigong stuff, like it was about 26 years ago, and like yoga was weird back then, right? Yoga was weird, meditation was like crazy. Now yoga is like exercise, meditation is like commonly kind of like like performed. And I actually think that like and I think what they track in terms of like the brain waves and kind of like what state you're in meditation, like that is now like people adopt that, right? And so hypnosis is like, in my experience now, it's just a different way of getting into that same state, right? And whereas I think meditative, it's kind of, in a way, they're really kind of connected, like very, very similar. But I think a lot of people struggle with meditation and being able to get to that state. They're kind of like Like, and that, I think that's why a lot of these like meditation apps have a hard time, because without someone like kind of coaching them into it, they're kind of like they can't do it themselves very easily. So I actually feel that this process today, like I'm definitely like what I wish I had done is more like an aura ring or something like that to kind of like see what like brainwave state I was in. We're putting EEG on or something like that. And I think
I
that's
can come back and we can do that again.
yeah, that's what we need to do, right? I feel like we need to
Yeah.
put like an EEG on and
Mhm.
kind of like see like what brainwave state that you're kind of in when you kind of get hypnotized. Because even last time we had a couple people with aura rings during the thing, and they're reporting, oh, I shifted to this, I shifted to that. They could see kind of like some like shift, and that was like proving to them that like it was real, right? Like where they weren't. I mean, even the experience, they weren't sure like whether it was like working or not, but like the aura ring was like, oh, this is real. Like I see like it's showing that I'm shifted to a different state now,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like that's what we need to do, like this
Well,
show.
and you bring up a good point because we need the proof.
We
But at the same time, we do not go unconscious.
yeah.
Even in the deep, deep Edsdale state,
Mm-hmm.
you are still aware of what's happening.
Yeah.
You just don't want to move the arm. You just don't, you twitch the arm, but you didn't want to lift it.
Yeah.
You were open to the suggestion that it was so heavy that you couldn't. You're like, that feels fucking good. And then remember when I brought you out of the very first experience before we went back into the self-healing thing? You were like, I feel like I can't open my eyes. I'm like, I'm going to use this state. I am going to leverage this moment in time because that's how I wanted to prove to you that, you're aware of what's happening. You just don't care. You're making the choice
Yeah.
to not notice this, or you're making the choice to not do that. So there is a small subset of people who go into such deep hypnotic state that they do drop into the deepest level of theta, that they come out with complete hypnoamnesia. It's the same way when you're having a dream and the dream is really vivid to you, and then you wake up out of the dream, and then a few minutes later, you're like, oh my God, what was I dreaming? It's the exact same thing, at least in my opinion.
Could we just kind of, for the audience sake, like explain kind of like the different brainwave states and
Sure.
like, what state normally you're in, and kind of like, when you're really focused, what state are you in? Like,
So we're all walking around in beta for the most part. Okay, beta is a really busy, active brainwave state. If you look at it, the sine wave is going pretty quick. Okay, it's up and down. The space between is very, very narrow. And this is for active focus concentration. This is being very alert, multitasking. We can only sustain that state on average for about 50 minutes, on average, give or take, before we naturally need to vent the overload of stimulus to the nervous system, psychological, neurological, and physiological. So what'll happen is you start losing your train of thought. You look out the window and you're like, oh God, I don't want to move my eyes. They feel so good, Or we're just reading the same line over and over again, or we need a break. And so we'll stretch, we'll do whatever. And then that's just enough of a venting so that we can get back into beta. So we've dipped into alpha. That spacey feeling is alpha. So alpha is the first stage of trance or hypnosis. And this is anything that captures your attention and focus, activates your imagination for better or worse, and it shifts your state in any direction. So the most common form is driving on autopilot. It is getting lost in a daydream, a movie, a story, a memory, or a worry for the future. So the most common form of self-hypnosis that people are trancing themselves out on is regrets and remorse and everything from the past, or worry and fear for the future. And it can shift our state. It's not real. So the alpha is that first state of hypnosis. And this is where Jose Silva would teach people to get into the alpha state and then use autogenic suggestion. I feel pain in my left foot. You acknowledge it. I don't want to feel pain. I don't need to feel pain. I don't like to feel pain. And then allow it to release. And then using the autogenic suggestion, I no longer have pain. I feel fine. And then through repetition, that's creating the mind-body connection, and the shift happens. So the deeper state of trance, the more absorbed state, is theta. And this is where we're in that twilighty state, like when we wake up in the morning or go to sleep at night. This is where people are going to dip out. Like you even said, yeah, I felt at one moment, my mind drifted and I kind of went somewhere. That's theta. And that's the more deeper state. Depth is just absorption. And I think the biggest problem, and this is even argued amongst hypnotists. You go into the different Facebook groups and people are bitching and arguing about it all day. What depth do you need for that? And you need to have this and you don't need to have. Everything is trance. Nothing is trance. I mean, it's all there. I'm wondering, why aren't you working with clients? I just pop in there just to kind of see what's happening because I'm having my, lunch break or something. I'm like, And this is the same people. It's like, get out there and work with people. Stop arguing about. That's just my little soapbox. But the idea being is that depth of trance is useful for certain things. Like if you're going to get surgery, you need Edsdale and you need to be conditioned to that and you need to be primed for it. So that way you can have the experience. You're going to always get that subset of people that can experience it just once in the doctor's office. I know someone when she was a teenager in the 60s, the doctor knew hypnosis and did a biopsy on her breast with only hypnosis, no pain meds at all. So there are people that can do that. But yeah, I think part of the disservice to hypnosis is that people think if I'm not unconscious, it didn't work. And I will go through this pre-talk with every single client. And there are always those people who are going to come out and say, God, I feel so much better, but I don't think I was hypnotized. I'm like, really? Why do you say that? Well, because I heard the trash truck outside. I'm like, remember, you don't go unconscious. It's what you choose to pay attention to, and what you choose to ignore.
Yeah, there's a lot of sensationalism when it comes to hypnosis, right? When you go to like the stage hypnosis and they kind of vet the crowd to see who's the best hypnotic subject, and then they have their reaction and people are kind of expecting that. Or like the stories about past life regression where people have like hypnoamnesia, they don't remember, and not everybody's like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like people have like really kind of extreme expectations at times. I met you at Hypnothoughts. You were doing a talk about, I think, being able to relive near-death experiences.
Mhm.
Like, how'd you get into that?
Yeah, the topic was how to apply hypnosis for clients who have had near-death and out-of-body experiences. So first of all, I've just been fascinated by it. I mean, I do like things a little occult, a little strange, a little weird. And so I've always been curious about it. And my mother had a near-death experience when we were children. She had got hit by a car. So she had recounted it. That's the first time I ever heard about it when I was about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old. But yeah, I had a client that came to me and he has given me permission to use his name and to tell his case study. But he lives in San Luis Obispo and he worked in the automotive field and he was working late one night and the lift fell. And so the car came down and fell on one of his arteries and he died. I think he said 3 or 4 times between when the initial impact occurred to when he got through surgery. And so he just came to hypnosis because he wanted to explore that some more. He had very vivid memories of it and he felt differently about the world and the universe and consciousness and humanity. And so he just wanted to explore it. And his neighbor actually said, oh, I know this hypnotist, you should go see her. And so I said, yeah, we can absolutely help you re-explore that. And so I got interested in it. And then this is back when I didn't have a full-time practice. And I'm of the mindset, I'd rather have a little bit of something than a whole lot of nothing. And if I don't have paying clients, at least I'm going to practice. So I put out an ad in on the social media and I said, hey, if anybody's had a near-death or out-of-body experience, you want to come play in hypnosis, as long as you give me permission to use your name in case studies, then let's play. So I had a number of people come forward and very similar type of experiences, but also with out-of-body people who spontaneously leave their body and can also come back and expand their consciousness to that degree. But what I found so interesting is when I was looking up in whatever research I could find online, there was one paper that was written where they did, because false memory is a real thing. That's a real thing. You can plant false memories.
Under hypnosis or like?
Don't even need to be in hypnosis. No. And we see this through what I call secondary association. So I've had this happen with clients where they say, well, I have a fear of water. And I say, really? What happened? Well, my mother told me that I almost drowned when I was a toddler. I said, but you don't remember it. No, but you know, God, she's told the story 100 times. And now I'm really afraid of water. So they don't have a real memory of it, but they have associated into the memory because of the story. But the way that they test this scientifically is within families, they can, it's kind of a sneaky thing, but what they would do is say, they would tell someone that something happened to them, kind of like what I told you, but it wasn't even real. And then the person associated into the memory because real or imagined is all the same to the subconscious mind. It cannot tell the difference between fantasy or reality, real or imagined. And this is why what we consume and social media is so important. It's so important who and what we surround ourselves with because we're taking in and we can't help but put ourselves into the experience. Storytelling is the oldest form of trance. But they did a study in a paper and they found that false memories, made up memories, real life memories, and near-death memories, they wanted to compare them with people under EEG and see what was happening. And what they found is that real life memories, ones that could be corroborated by family members or eyewitnesses, and those from near death came from the same regions of the brain.
Wow.
Whereas false memory came from the more imaginary centers of the brain, the part where we are literally making shit up.
Yeah.
So granted, that was one paper that I could find, but that was enough for me that when I did the talk, I thought it's really curious and interesting, isn't it, to know that we have the capacity to expand upon an experience. And we know people think, oh, it's just because of your cultural conditioning or your religious background that you're seeing the light. Not everybody sees the light.
Hmm.
You know, it doesn't happen very often, but there are people who recount going to what we would describe as hell.
Yeah. And you've worked with people regarding having them relive psychedelic experiences as
Mhm.
well. Have you explored that?
A few times, yeah. I mean, I just work with whatever comes in the door, quite frankly, and it's kind of nice. But yeah, I've had people who said, "Wow, I had this incredible experience on plug in the psychedelic,"
Yeah.
and they're like, "I really just want to revivify it, or I wonder if I could take it further and keep going because it kind of wore off." And so yeah, and it's just it's a process of revivification. And here is where the hypnotist has to be careful not to lead. You get with it, we always have to be careful not to lead. Let's be real clear about that. But the idea being is that you get the sketch, even with the near death, you get the sketch of the details of what you know happened. And then once they leap off that edge and you're into new territory, you say, and then what do you notice? And now, what are you noticing now? You probably noticed me say that to you. And what are you noticing now? I'm not going to infer that you're feeling anything. That would be a suggestion. So yeah, that's how we work with it,
Yeah, it's
the psychedelic
intriguing.
stuff.
Now, I like to refer to hypnosis as precision plasticity
Mm,
because in meditation is very general plasticity. You're
mhm.
kind of reorganizing the networks and
I like that.
you're
Yeah,
having
steal it.
the general effects of feel maybe something was lifted from you, but with hypnosis, it's very precise. You're basically not controlling the subject, but you're helping them getting into a deep state, and then you're programming them in a very precise manner that really differentiates that from any other modality that I've really seen. Uh, Earlier, we were discussing some of the physiological changes that can take place from hypnosis. Things like changing bosom size or whatever you want to call it. It's interesting because your perspective was that you're just kind of maybe dissociating. Maybe that was like your initial perspective of hypnosis, but it seems like there's good data to indicate that you can have biological changes definitively under the hypnotic state. What's your experience with that?
I would say absolutely. It's just we're not taking the time to measure it. I think if we did measure and calibrate it, we would see it's happening. Uh, I know that Albert Nirenberg, he's a friend, mutual friend, and he did his Prague study where they did no-touch erotic orgasms or hypnotic orgasms, and they found that they could measure the blood of the people before and after, and there was a measurable change in the hormonal makeup based on people who were having these. That they were there was something real happening, and that's the same with I think anything. We know that hypnosis can positively influence blood pressure, heart rate, circulation, temperature. I've worked with women who have used it for childbirth, people who've used it to go into state pre-surgery and post-op and for healing and recovery. So yeah, I do believe. I mean, if you think about it, what you think about and imagine has the capacity to change your physiology. And so when people like to, talk shit on the placebo, to me, I think, isn't it amazing that I can imagine or expect something to happen and it's measurable? It happens. And this where, we were talking about the breast enlargement, it doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't hold permanently for everybody, but there are people that it does work on and it does hold permanently. So we have to again look at the whole context of who we're dealing with. What are their lifestyle factors? What are their, experiences that could change that? So
Yeah.
yeah.
You were mentioning that I think you had worked on a subject that suffered a stroke. Is that true in the past with your energy healing? There's a case study out of the UK that was published a couple of years ago that they had a hypnotist in the emergency room. Uh, and then when people would come in with strokes and they would be hypnotized and it had like a profound effect on their recovery. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's probably like there's some ability to kind of affect that because like I think ultimately the ability to relax the body So I think tension is just natural in the body, right? And I think it's hard to kind of get away from tension, especially in the kind of world we live in right now. Like you're just constantly kind of like surrounded by things that kind of create stress and tension in the body. And that's all bad. Like there's almost like no, I mean, except for like holding you up, right? Like I think like the ability to kind of relax or get yourself into a state where like you have less tension kind of like relieves pressure. And so pressure, I think, is what the cause of a lot of things, right? So um, it's kind of crazy. So my dad had a stroke last week. And so he basically they found so we're actually doing research. So it's kind of funny. Like I've been researching this for the last week about whether he should go through surgery right now because he's got two I think arteries right now that have plaque in them that are at like 70%, and it's kind of like at the borderline of like whether he should get the surgery. If he's like very active, he should definitely get the surgery. If he's very sedative, like or doesn't have like a very active life, he should not get the surgery because there's more risk of him kind of like having a bad side effect of the surgery than him kind of like being very active and causing something that's going to like reduce that. So, but like the combination of like buildup in the body is obviously very bad. And then when you add pressure to that buildup, I think like that's when it causes something to be like, okay, it's too much.
More
The body can't take it,
constriction.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the healings I've done with like stroke recovery have been mostly about the symptoms of stroke recovery. So a lot of times what happens is that you have like some impact here. I'll work on kind of like the brain, but then that will impact kind of like the shoulder in a lot of cases where like, the respiratory system or kind of like the leg. And so it usually happens on like one side of the body. And so what I try to do is I try to recover like that pathway from the brain head all the way down to like the shoulder to relieve the shoulder pain. And because I think like once it's happened, it's happened. There's not much you can do about like what's happened already in the past. You just have to try to do preventative work for like
Hmm.
and then recovery work for like the things that are the kind of like downstream symptoms that you get from a stroke.
Yeah.
So but absolutely, I think that like the ability to relax is like really key. The
Uh-huh.
ability to sleep is really key,
Mhm.
right? So I think these kinds of things are like how the body like really heals, right?
Yeah.
And so like so I think the amazing thing about hypnosis is that it is able to kind of get you to that state of like relaxation where your body can naturally heal.
Mhm.
It's almost like sleep, but you're actually kind of like triggering it, and you're like, and you're activating something in the body to kind of like focus on an area to kind of heal. I'm talking about kind of pain or other physiological kind of like healing stuff. I'm sure there's um, like the mental block thing is like maybe a whole different world of stuff, right? Um, yeah, I think one thing I want to ask is like, what are the different categories of things that hypnosis can help with?
Personally, I think there's nothing it can't help with.
Hmm.
If we talk about stroke, what you were just talking about, the way I've worked with clients that have come to me in the past is initially those first few sessions are just dealing with the fear, the pressure that's created by the fear from the experience. Then it's the frustration of not being able to be who they've always been. And then once you that start to dial that down and we move into a place of neutrality, it's not necessarily acceptance. It's just, okay, I can feel neutral about it. Then we can use hypnosis to, again, access the plasticity to be able to revivify what it's like to hold the fork. What is it like to drive the car? And we've all seen or and heard of cases where somebody's had a brain injury and they've lost the ability to do something, but then the neurons find a workaround, right? And so I think this is where the hypnosis could, if it were studied, we would probably find that through repetitive revivification, and I have to be really clear here, it's about activating all the sensory pathways. It's not just imagining it. It's what does it feel like? What does it look like? If it had a sound to it when you're eating with your fork,
Almost
it
like a
would
synesthetic thing. Huh?
yes, and so you're actually really bringing in the sensory experience of the memory of it. Then that's what the body's supposed to be doing, and we can potentially create new neural pathways for
Mhm.
that or rebuild old ones. But I think you can use hypnosis for anything because I want to address too where you said it's like you're not really asleep. No, you're not. But hypnos was the Greek god of sleep. And so when they needed to call it something because someone looks like they're asleep through the process of this, therapeutic or clinical experience, it looks like they're sleeping.
Mm.
And even like when you said, yeah, I don't really want to open my eyes. How many times have we had that in the morning when we're waking up like, I don't really want to open my eyes. So I think that's, I like to try to educate people. Look, you can call it trance or you can call it hypnosis. It's the same thing. You can call it spacing out. You can call it daydreaming or imagining. It's all the same. But yeah, I think it can be used for anything. We Clinically, we say that we don't treat, diagnose, or cure. We use hypnosis for vocational or avocational avenues, self-improvement, self-healing. But yeah, I don't think there's anything you couldn't use it for.
Yeah, one interesting thing is like for acute injuries, there was a medical doctor, emergency room medical doctor named Dabney Ewan from New Orleans. I don't know if you know about him. I think it was in the 70s. He wrote up a bunch of case studies where people would come in with very bad burns.
Mhm.
New Orleans, crazy place. And he would quickly hypnotize them to imagine like cold rain on their body. And they would have a significantly accelerated healing compared to like the normal protocol. But he noticed that there was a timing aspect of it. Like if he got to them a little too late, then the reaction already occurred and they couldn't really change it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about like using hypnosis for acute situations. Have you ever worked in that sort of field?
I haven't. I've trained in emergency hypnosis.
Okay.
When I say I've trained it, and I'm not going to say I'm certified to go run out and do it, because it's one thing to get a certification and a training, but I think it's through the repetition and application that you remember how to do that shit, right?
Yeah.
And fortunately, I have not had the situation arise where I've needed to do emergency hypnosis. However, I know enough of the process and of the training that I feel confident that if something happened, I could help them.
Yeah.
And I do agree it's very likely a timing thing. But when we think of what hypnosis is, I gave you the description of the brain waves. Anything between alpha and theta is trance. But it is also an experience. It's anything, and I mean anything, that captures your attention and focus, activates your imagination for better or worse, and then it shifts your state, even if we go into shock. So if a person gets burned or they're coming out of a car accident and they're in shock, they are already in. We don't really need to do any sort of induction. It's really just, hey, look right here. I got you. You're going to be safe. Hey, look right here. Take some breaths. And with every inhale, you're sucking. Just imagine your body drawing all of the blood away from the laceration. It's like, oh. And then again, where the mind goes, the body follows. And then I think the physiology that kicks in is that, when we get a laceration, what happens? All the white blood cells they go there to create inflammation, to protect the site, to bring blood flow, to help it to heal. Now, for those medical people out there, I probably totally fucked that up, but you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
So the idea of being is that if in trance, we can reduce the pressure, like you say, and go into a state of ease, and then use our imagination to tell the body what to do,
Mhm.
of course you have the capacity to see something
Yeah.
change physically.
Yeah. It's
I don't even think it's imagination. I actually think that you're like physiological. Like through this experience today,
Mhm.
I actually no longer believe it's imagination. I actually no longer believe it's like,
Imagination is the pathway.
yeah.
It's
So
the
it's,
pathway that got you
yeah,
there.
I
Yeah.
actually think that like, it's a form of like relaxing the body enough, where the tension in your body is loose enough
Mhm.
that the body is now able to heal, and then you're somehow able to direct kind of like that healing to that area of the body. And some people can be more precise about it, and some people may not be able to be as accurate about it. That might be a skill, right? And I think
is.
maybe because of
Hypnosis is a skill.
right, but moving the energy to that part of the body, we're moving whatever you're moving to kind of like enable that part of the body to heal. I think that might be a skill kind of on top of like just kind of like the hypnosis thing. So I feel like I physiologically feel a change in my body like after this, which I did not maybe feel before or believe in before. And so I feel like that is like that's very viscerally different like for me. And so my view of the experience today is kind of like very, very different from like my perception of like what I thought hypnosis was, right? I thought it was kind of like just a mental kind of like thing where you're blocking something or kind of like not perceiving something. But I actually now think it's like you're relaxing the body to a point where then you can actually then physically kind of like heal the body in a certain area. Pain is kind of like the energy healing and qigong stuff I do is actually broader than pain. But I focus on pain because it's kind of like I can tell the difference and people can tell the difference. Like, you have
Yeah.
a rotator cuff tear or you have like something that's like painful and you can give me a number that kind of like tells the difference, right? And so I feel like the other things we've done before, it's been a little bit hard for me to be very clear on kind of like the impact, right? Because I have all these other factors that are going on in my life that affect sleep, like a 4-year-old traveling to like Asia. So,
Running
like,
businesses, yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of hard, right? But like, but the pain thing is like very, very clear to me. Like I I know what I was before, I know what I'm after, and I know I can tell how long it lasts for. I can so that's like it's a kind of its barometer is kind of like really different for me. Like
But I think the key too, though, is that the imagination is what we have, what we use to unlock the possibility for this change.
yeah.
Because yes, we can elicit physiological changes, but you have to imagine that can even happen first. And so that's why I invite people to use the imagination to play the way we were when we were children. What if? Because that is what allows, there's in hypnosis, we give people the illusion of control.
hmm
When we're working really permissively, yeah, that's the right
Hmm.
word, with permissive, not with direct suggestion. And it depends. Direct suggestion does not work with me at all. You try to hypnotize me with
Yeah.
direct suggestion, and every wall will come up. But if you engage me to use my imagination, then again, it's the illusion of control. The facilitator is still controlling, for lack of a better word. I like to use directing the scene and the scenario, but it's all happening inside. But yeah, I think you're going to experience something, but the imagination is what gets us there.
Yeah, or else she just would have put you in neutral trance, but you still wouldn't have the pain relief that you have
Yeah.
now.
So like there's like three other things that I kind of have been experiencing where I've kind of like done that have been kind of interesting in terms of like moving me into a similar state, like in a way. Breath work, I think, is like really interesting because it's kind of like this repetitive, like like this. I've done lots of breath work, but then this one style of breath work I feel like is really interesting where you kind of like you're the cyclical kind of like never stop kind of like cycle breathing. And and I think like because it's so repetitive in this like one form and it's kind of like this continuous cycle that never ends, you end up kind of going to this like almost like trance like state. And you're
Absolutely.
building pressure kind of along the way through the breath work, right? So I think that's like a really interesting one example. Another one is actually there's a Qigong methodology where you're almost kind of like repeating something like in your head like continuously. And so it's kind of you can almost see it's like a chant, right? But like this methodology is it's like a 9-digit number. You just kind of constantly repeat this number in your head and there's a lot of Chinese kind of like theory around kind of like the numerology to your birth date and like all kinds of stuff and like the cosmic whatever. I don't know if I believe in all buy into all that stuff, right? But the number thing actually it worked for me. Like basically kind of like I repeat this number in my head constantly. What I really feel is going on is that it's moving me into a trance state. I'm kind of like not able to focus on kind of like anything actively. It's like forcing me to kind of like just like go into kind of like a subconscious state. And then with that, then my body starts like moving in a certain way.
Yep.
And then it's like the energy is like something's moving my body to the areas where I have damage and it's kind of like self-healing. The
Think of,
third
I'm sorry.
the third thing that's like really interesting is like clubbing in a nightclub. And like, so ironically have been kind of like this in the nightclub. I was in the nightclub business for like 20 years, right? Kind of like, it was like a fun hobby that kind of like, it never ended. And that's what this is here now, like is the evolution of that. But like but I don't think I really understood like why I liked it so much, right? Like I realized I like music, but there's something about kind of like the nightclub where like, it's kind of like, it puts you in a trance state. The music is like very
Mhm.
kind of like,
Lights.
yeah, it's like constantly going, the lights are going, everybody's kind of moving at the same kind of like pace and it's therapeutic in some like weird way,
Of
right?
course it is.
I don't know if it's healing, but it's definitely like therapeutic, right? So like,
It's all the trance, because when you think about what's needed for hypnosis,
yeah,
hypnosis is a focus. That's why they used to use the pocket watch. It's an eye fascination. Cell phones by design are an instant induction. It's there you go. So the idea is that you need focus. So you're focusing on the number, you're focusing on the breath. And then what happens is there's a repetition. So through the focus, whatever the method is, there's the repetition. Through that repetition, then starts to happen inside a change in regulation. So heart rate changes, breath changes, pulse change, all this stuff changes, blood pressure. And so yes, the environment is very conducive to trance-like situations in a nightclub like that. It's sensory overload. I think I said this earlier. Hypnosis is a form of escape. Everything is too much, too big, too overloaded. So I'm just going to go into it. And so in the nightclub, that's a perfect example of sensory overload. I'm going to escape into a trance-like state that's far more comfortable than this sensory overload.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
One of the biggest issues out there today, I think, in terms of the population is people having issues with sleep. Like insomnia is rampant. It's going crazy. And I've had some success using hypnosis for sleep. I think you mentioned some sort of success using hypnosis. What's been your experience working with hypnosis for sleep?
I think it's very effective when people are grown ass adults and they do the grown ass adults things you need to do to sleep. So, I mean, that's a little harsh, but it's the truth. I mean, people think that hypnosis is going to be this magic panacea that's going to get us to sleep.
Hmm.
It is a huge, huge part of the process,
Hmm.
but you have to make your bed for just sleep and sex. You have to turn off your devices at enough time so that you minimize your exposure to blue light. Even if you turn it on the amber, you're still activating your brain, keeping yourself in that beta state. You have to set, I tell clients like each night, if you're going to bed at 2, set yourself a timer, you're going to bed at 1:45. Do that for a few days, then make it 1:30. So that way you can start to reverse engineer the habit that you've got yourself in, because there's only 3 drives. People think that sex is a drive. Sex is not a drive. Sex is a need, right? But we have a drive. The only drives we have is number 1 is to breathe. Number 2 is to eat. Number 3 is to sleep. Because without sleep, we know that our mental state falls apart, metabolic processes get, hampered. It's harder to lose weight. It can affect everything from your fertility to your mood to oxidation, everything. So the idea is, when I say we need to be grown ass adults, it's like, if I give you a hypnosis audio to listen to it. If it means that you have to take the grown up step of going to bed earlier, you have to do that. One of the things that I suggested based on clients, what their history is if there's a precipitous blood sugar drop that happens between 1 and 4 in the morning when the liver is pretty active, that can trigger a little bit of dreams to be really stimulating, because there's more adrenaline in, even if we don't remember the dream or don't think we're dreaming. It sends a signal to wake us up, because the brain and body, it's lacking glucose, it needs fuel. So some people, to have a little bit of protein before you go to bed is helpful. So I think hypnosis can be incredibly powerful, because insomnia can become a habit. Wakefulness can become a habit. We're trying to problem solve in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Yeah, man. We talking to you.
Yeah.
I actually think hypnosis for sleep is incredible.
Yeah.
So like my first experience was with Albert Nuremberg, and so what happened was he hypnotized me just for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like for a short amount of time, right? And it wasn't for sleep. It was just like he just was just giving me a demo, and then John healed me. And so we're playing around with kind of like hypno healing, and but I went home and I slept great. Like,
I'll tell you why.
yeah, for like maybe a week or so, right? And then it kind of wore off for whatever reason. And then we had an event here at Modernist where we had a number of people we brought up that hypnotized, and then one of the girls like self-reported just on her IG. She basically said like, I got hypnotized at Modernist and I slept great. Like, I'm gonna go do research on this. So there's definitely some correlation between sleep and hypnosis.
Here's my professional opinion, is that it goes back to the pressure that you talked about. It goes back to, hypnosis is a venting process. It's a way to vent the overload of neurological, psychological, and physiological stress. So the most common unintended benefit of people coming in for hypnosis for anything outside of sleep is they're sleeping better, because the unconscious mind is getting a chance to vent the overload of stimulus that they either aren't venting because they're not sleeping well, they're taking, they're not dreaming as deeply or as much as they could be for whatever various reasons. Lots of things can inhibit our dreams. Did you come to my talk on dream therapy? I don't know if you were in on that one.
No, it wasn't able.
But at any rate, so there's a lot of things that can inhibit our capacity to vent through the sleeping and dreaming process. So when you go into hypnosis is a venting process. And so if you have a demo, if you're venting out enough so that when you do go to sleep at night, your nervous system, your subconscious mind, your body says, oh, I'm already primed to let myself have this experience. This is my personal opinion. And what I've seen through clients,
Yeah.
through the years.
Yeah. Hypnosis for sleep, pain, reliving near-death experiences, growing boobs, all sorts of applications. What's your biggest passion right now in the field of hypnosis?
It's the same one across any issue, and that is reminding people how much power and authority you have over what controls you, what doesn't, how you react or respond to life. Because I don't care. I mean, I work with people with body image issues, sexual dysfunctions. I've worked with professional musicians, golfers, I work with, single moms, and I work with college students who've experienced sexual assault. You name it. There is always a component of feeling disempowered in some way. And so when you can create a space for somebody to remember, and I use this language with everybody, you are the spiritual authority of your mind and body, free to live according to your own sense of morality and integrity. And that in every experience, there's a moment of choice. And you can choose what to hold on to, what to release, what controls you and what doesn't. So the idea being when you're trying to sleep or you're trying to, have sex, people come in with, sex, I can't get out of my head. I'm like, well, which head do you want to be in? Let's talk about that. Are you, and because there's also parameters around why that they would keep that from happening. But it all comes down to, what am I going to choose to allow myself to experience right now? And I like to remind people that we can choose to feel good about ourselves. Those things that we can't particularly change, we can give a different frame about. So that's my passion. I mean, and I think it is among a lot of people in my industry. We're just trying to remind people who they were born to be without all the shit that came along. And
I got you. You've had some experiences with hypnosis now regarding pain, sleep. Where do you want to go forward in your exploration with this field?
I think we want to explore healing, right? I think we want to explore kind of like the combination of hypnosis and energy healing together. We've had kind of a trial test, like where one of my healers healed me under hypnosis, and it was definitely quicker than we would normally like heal with, and so I think like there's a lot of stuff we can do in terms of combination of that.
I would posit that the reason why that is because when we're in even a light trance state, but especially the more absorbed, quote, deeper states, there's an absence of tension.
Yeah.
There's an absence of emotional thought, projection, worry. You're going into that neutral place. So there's less resistance within the body to facilitate that change. Now, we talked a little bit about the resistant benefit, the positive intention of why someone would have change, why someone would have pain. One of the things that I think could be useful in the research is asking on a questionnaire, what does this pain do for you? And people, I ask them out, it's a common thing in our field. I'm the hypnotists who are listening are like nodding their head like, that's just so basic, But it's true. When I ask people, what do you think the pain does for you? What do you mean? It doesn't do anything for me. Well, it has to do something. At the very least, it's sending you a signal that you need to attend to an injury or something wrong inside your body. So we know at the very least it's doing something. And so if the pain gives us attention from a partner, if it gives us permission slip to be lazy and not have to do that project, if it gives us an out for a job that we just fucking hate and we're the provider of the family, so we can't just quit. There's so many different reasons why someone would have pain. So if you're going to have a research on it, I would have maybe a few questions that dig in to what does this pain do for you? Because the idea is that you can heal the person from that thing, but if they still have a need that's not getting met, then it's potentially possible that they could recreate pain in another way.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think that pain, it's interesting because we work on, let's say like a torn rotator cuff, right? Or we work on like sciatica. We work on kind of like knee pain or like things like that. I definitely think, there's a range of things that some things are actually, I feel, mental, like mental block, kind of like stuff. Some things are just like really physical, kind of like, it's like, oh, that thing is like really torn or we have to kind of repair that somehow. And so I think that I've explored kind of like the different modalities of like trying to heal different things. And there's kind of a well-known book about like heal your back, and you kind of like put attention towards it, and you repeat kind of like that with affirmations that you can kind of heal your back. And it works for some people, and I think it works for some conditions, right? And I think it doesn't work for others. And so I feel there's like this range of like stuff that like a spectrum of like kind of healing. The healing modality that I do, the training is actually all from martial arts. And so my power that I create to kind of like do the healing is created by holding a squat for an hour a day. So I literally just physically hold a squat.
So you're going to be kind to those ankles. We need to have a conversation in hypnosis with those ankles and say, thank you for doing this.
Yeah. And it doesn't use my mind at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't use the person that heals mind at all. It's like it's completely physical. I just like muscle tension, relax my hands in a certain way, and this like power comes out of my hand. and then I can direct it somewhere. I don't even need to think or anything. I just like it just goes kind of like into the body, and then it tries to like repair stuff. And people will report that they feel kind of like tingling or kind of
Yeah.
like it'll move through the body in a certain way, or like it'll heat up a lot, and then that will be kind of like the repair mechanism. But the resistance that of tension in that person's body makes the healing process kind of like harder, right? So basically, like if we can reduce the resistance and we can reduce the amount of energy, or we can actually heal things that are just harder to heal, or where we can't heal because we can't get enough power in there. So like right now, when we heal someone, like we healed someone yesterday, um, ex Navy SEAL, like a parachute accident, like jumped out, parachute kind of pulled up and snapped his neck, and then like basically caused like a lot of pain and tension, kind of like in this area. He's had it for like 20 years, right? It's like it's real. It's not imagining in his head. It's like
Exactly.
he's physically had like some issue, and we brought his pain down from like a 4 to like a 1.5, but it took like 4 of us to do it. So I mean, like we need 4 healers to work on like one person. It was a long process. We're full power for like 40 minutes working on this guy, and we still couldn't get it down to a 0, right? So I bet if we had him in hypnosis, we probably could have gotten him down to like a 0.
I would agree.
Yeah.
The other thing is look at who it is you're healing. Here is a person who's conditioned to be in control, to maintain a state, to be able to do a job. I see this with law enforcement. I see it with military. You know, to hypnotize them, they're like, you can tell they're like so fucking afraid. They think they're going to lose control, but you know, it's the fear of losing control that's got control over them. And so, yeah, I would say, yeah, a person like that who's trained to be in control, and they've been trying to brace and control this pain for so long that it's creating that resistance. They want the healing, and they're welcome, and they're open to it. They've come to you. But again, there's these unconscious resistance factors I think hypnosis has the capacity to dissolve. The other thing I would add to your questionnaire, if you're open to it, is asking if they're worthy and deserving of being pain-free. Because that's the other piece that I see that keeps people stuck in situations, is not feeling worthy or deserving of having what they want.
Right. I definitely think there's like some kind of mind-body connection that kind of like causes some kind of resistance.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is that like I have to admit that in the first couple sessions that I had with you, I was probably resistant, like in some form, right? Like I was like, while you're doing it with me, I'm like thinking like, what is she doing to me, right? Like, and like I'm processing it, and I'm like, what's going on in my body? Like, what am I feeling? And I feel like today I had less of that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's like why, in a way, it like when I think back on it, there were a couple things that were in person. I think it is kind of like helpful to like touch. You know, it kind of like makes me go deeper. But I think that you can do probably most of those things kind of like remotely and not require that.
I can give the autogenic, you know, when you touch your finger together,
Yeah.
that touch takes you deeper. And let's be clear, some people do not like to be touched.
Yeah.
So to touch them is not going to necessarily make them go deeper, because there's lots of different styles of hypnotic personality.
But I do think that's why in probably a bunch of cases it needs like 3 or 4 sessions, right, to get almost like comfortable with kind of like the process of like what you're going through, right? Because like
Because you're very, very vulnerable, right?
yeah, because
Somebody-
like
Absolutely.
you know, you have all these preconceived notions of like what's going on, like, oh, she's going to like bring me
Program
into
you,
a state and reprogram me in a certain way. Like you're kind of afraid to kind of like let that happen to you. And so I think like a natural thing probably in the first few sessions of like people
It is.
going through this is like they're resistant, and over time I bet that breaks down, right? So yeah.
And it's all about the rapport you have with the practitioner. It's the
Right.
environment that you're in. I do remember the first session when we had you lie down toward the end, and I was bringing you out, and you're just laying there. And I'm like, come on, Albert, I know it feels so good, but you got to wake up now.
I did not want to get up. So
So here's the thing. It's like you're still processing. It's the illusion of control. You're still processing. What is she
you know
doing to me?
why? It's because I finally let go.
Ah,
Right?
okay.
Like
Good
it took me a while
information.
to kind of let go, because I'm not used to it, right? So
But that was the primer for you.
Yeah.
That allowed you, somewhere deep inside of you, you gave yourself permission. Oh, it's kind of okay to let go.
yeah,
And I use the word surrender when I hypnotize people all the time. And I know that's a big
Yeah, we taught to never surrender, man.
never surrender. And especially when you're dealing with military law enforcement, when you're
Right.
dealing with women or even men who've undergone really terrible sexual assaults and things like that. they were forced to surrender, or they've been taught never to surrender.
Mm.
So surrender can be a really hot button word. But when I ask, which is exactly what I did with you today, it's like surrender doesn't mean giving away. It means choosing what you're going to allow.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we do the thing later with the group, I'm going to be using that word, and I'm going to be watching for who's like giving me the little, what's she talking about? Because those are the people that when they do allow are going to have the biggest experience.
Mm.
Yeah.
This I was told in the beginning, the skeptics that come to you will send you the most referrals.
Mm.
Because the people who already come in believing it and feel great, they're going to feel great, and they're still going to tell people. But the people who are like, I didn't think she could fucking do that.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Actually, even in my practice, I don't like people that believe in what I do.
Mhm.
So I only work with skeptics. It's kind of like the weirdest thing. So like I don't like the markets that are already kind of like, interested in what I do. I kind of like try to find markets of people that don't believe. It's a weird kind of conflict.
You like to
but-
torture yourself, man.
yeah, I torture myself. But like those people are kind of like, I feel like we're making progress in the world if we can convert
Yeah.
people to
Yeah.
like that are like not
Mm-hmm.
that are not believers.
Flipping people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's flipping people.
When it comes to hypnosis, I say believe or don't believe.
Yeah.
The hypnosis is happening anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever got lost in a fantasy, a sexual fantasy? I ask the people, have you never, I mean, rarely, if someone is asexual, they're going to tell me no. But the average person, I can't be hypnotized. Really? Really? Believe or don't believe. But when I say what hypnosis is, you've never had a sexual fantasy where you started to get some chub and a boner. Come on. That is trance. You put yourself in it. So believe or don't believe.
Yeah.
But and I know, see, I got the reaction out of you too that I wanted. When you bring a sexual context into it, number one, almost everyone can get it. But number two, it triggers a physiological feeling. And so, this is where being a little provocative, I think, at times can help. Know your audience before you say those kinds of things. I'm not going to do that, at a mom's group at the local, elementary. But in certain contexts, I think it's really helpful because people want to say that they can't be hypnotized. You can resist it, but believe or don't believe, you're still experiencing it every day.
Absolutely. Gila Zak, 13 years in this field. Amazing work. Where can people find you?
They can find me on the internet. I have a website. It is quantumwaveshypnotherapy.com. I have a YouTube channel. It's hypno_G. And I have, actually, that's Instagram. Instagram is hypno_G. And my YouTube is the G-Spot Hypnotherapy. And I've got lots of videos on what hypnosis is, what it isn't. There's some exercises there. I specialize in many areas. One of them is relationship strategies. So there's a whole series on how and why we behave the way we do in relationships and how to change that if we want to.
Beautiful. It's so awesome. So awesome to talk to you. Looking
Thanks.
forward to doing future shows, future events with you, and looking forward to exploring hypnosis going forward.
Thank you. It's been an honor and privilege to be here. You have a fantastic crew, I have to say. They're amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you for the experience. It was really incredible. So
I'm glad you enjoyed
thank
it.
you.